Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another modern gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at Skred Red, a mono red deck that makes use of snow-covered basic mountains to enable Skred, 1 mana for an instant, that deals damage to target creature equal to the number of snow permanents we control, which includes the 20 basic snow-covered mountains as well as the 2 copies of Scrying Sheets. So essentially Skred deals damage equal to the number of lands we control to target creature. Then we also have 4 copies of Lightning Bolt as more cheap removal, and the full 4 copies of Relic of Progenitus as just a cheap cantripping artifact that also hurts the opponent's graveyard, which there are a lot of graveyard-based decks in Modern nowadays. Then at 2 mana we've got some ramp in the form of a Mind Stone, 2 mana artifact that taps to add 1 colorless, and we can also sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card. And then I also put Simian Spirit Guide in this category, not a 3 mana 2/2 we're often going to cast. Instead we can exile the Spirit Guide from our hand to add 1 red mana to our mana pool, which helps us ramp out some of our more expensive cards, since as you can see we've got quite a few 4-drops in the deck, as well as the full 4 copies of Blood Moon, and if we can cheat Blood Moon into play on turn 2 thanks to Simian Spirit Guide, that can have a very big impact on the game. Blood Moon turning all non-basic lands into mountains, which of course messes with a lot of mana bases in Modern. Then we also have 2 copies of Eternal Scourge, which is a pretty synergistic card in this deck, 3 mana for a 3/3 Eldrazi Horror, and we can cast Eternal Scourge from exile, and whenever the Eternal Scourge becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, we get to exile Eternal Scourge. So it's a very annoying threat that keeps coming back from exile if the opponent tries to kill it, and we also have some built-in synergy with our deck, in that let's say our opponent attacks us with a giant creature, we chum block it with Eternal Scourge, then we can use our own Relic of Progenitus to exile the Eternal Scourge from our graveyard, so it gets exiled, and then we can recast it from exile to get that chum blocker once again to maybe protect one of our planeswalkers. And Eternal Scourge also synergizes nicely with our next card, which is Anger of the Gods, dealing 3 damage to each creature, and creatures that would die get exiled instead. So if we exile our own Eternal Scourge with Anger of the Gods, we can still replay it from exile. And then at 4 mana we've got our heavy hitters that we're trying to ramp into with Spirit Guide or Mind Stone. We've got 3 copies of Koth of the Hammer, 4 mana Planeswalker, stars at 3 loyalty. The +1 ability untaps a mountain we control and turns it into a 4/4 red elemental creature token until end of turn. And then the -2 can add 1 red mana to our mana pool for each mountain we control, so it can help us ramp out even bigger stuff. And then the -5, which we can reach pretty quickly, gives us an emblem that says mountains we control have the ability to tap to deal 1 damage to any target, which is also a game-winning play. Then we also have 2 copies of Pia and Kiran Nalaar, 4 mana for a 2/2 legendary creature that makes 2 Thopter tokens with flying, and for 2 in a red we can sacrifice an artifact, including the Thopter tokens, to deal 2 damage to any target. And we've got some other artifacts like Mind Stone and Relic of Progenitus that we can also convert into 2 damage with Pia and Kiran. Then we also have 2 copies of Chandra, Torch of Defiance, another powerful planeswalker, the first +1 ability providing card advantage, the second +1 ability helping us ramp even more, then the -3 dealing 4 damage to any creature, and then the -7 also game winning. And then we also have a single copy of Hazoret the Fervent as another powerful finisher, 4 mana for a 5/4 indestructible haste legendary creature god. Hazoret can't attack or block unless we've got 1 or fewer cards in hand, and then for 2 in a red we can discard a card to deal 2 damage to each opponent, so great finisher. And then last but not least, 2 copies of Stormbreath Dragon, 5 mana for a 4/4 flying haste, protection from white, so can be targeted by removal spells like Path to Exile, and for 7 mana has Monstrosity 3, so gets to put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and when the dragon becomes monstrous it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. And of course if you combine that with maybe a Blood Moon stranding a bunch of cards in the opponent's hand, then Stormbreath Dragon is going to deal a lot of damage with the Monstrosity ability, and we can use Koth or Chandra to help us ramp out the Monstrosity as well. And then our mana base is very straightforward, 20 basic snow-covered mountains, as well as 2 copies of Scrying Sheets, which we can use to maybe reveal an extra land to provide a bit of card advantage that way as well. And then taking a look at our sideboard, we've got a Pithing Needle to shut down opposing planeswalkers, for example, Shattering Spree as artifact removal, Damping Sphere against the Tron and Storm decks, we've got a Lava Coil as more removal that can also exile, we've got 2 copies of Dragon's Claw against the burn decks, since we're also playing a red deck ourselves, can gain us quite a bit of life. We've got a Ratchet Bomb as a catch-all answer, also helps us deal with enchantments, which mono red usually doesn't get to answer. 2 copies of a Goblin Rabble Master as a way to apply a lot of early pressure against some of the combo decks. another Anger of the Gods against creature decks and dredge decks, and finally 3 copies of Molten Rain to complement our Blood Moons to mess with the opponent's mana. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw with a reasonable hand. We've got double Skred as interaction, a Relic to deal with the graveyard, and then Mindstone to help us ramp. Turn 1 a Razorverge Thicket into Gladecover Scout. Alright, so this is the Hexproof deck, which I imagine is a pretty bad matchup for us since we don't really have a great way to interact with the Hexproof creatures. We'll play a Relic for now. We can hope to find an Anger of the Gods before the creature is big enough. We can hope to land a Blood Moon early to shut down their mana. And then in the sideboard we have a Ratchet Bomb. Core Spirit Dancer we can deal with thanks to our Skred. Alright, so sadly we can't go Mindstone into a removal spell. So between Skred and Lightning Bolt I guess we'll use Skred to kill the Spirit Dancer while we can. And pass a turn. And then end of turn we'll probably sacrifice a Relic of Progenitus to draw a card. Opponent goes for the Rancor. +2/+0 and Trample. And another one. So that's 5 power. It's going to be a 4-turn clock at the very least. And Ethereal Armor to speed things up even more. Giving +1/+1 for each enchantment they control. So an 8/4, first striking, trampling, Gladecover Scout. Let's sack the Relic. Anger of the Gods, well, if it weren't for the Ethereal Armor, it might have been enough. Pia Kiran, so we're missing our land drops as well. So, yeah, the Eternal Scourge jump blocking is not going to work against the Rancor giving Trample, otherwise that could have been a plan as well. Just play Mindstone for now, I guess, but it's not looking good. Opponent cycles Horizon Canopy, and Spider Umbra as more protection with that Totem Armor. And a second Spider Umbra is just going to be lethal here, thanks to the Ethereal Armor. Alright, well, that was a beating. Let's go to sideboarding, and let's see what we pick up. We've got a Ratchet Bomb as useful interaction. Anything else? Probably want another Anger of the Gods to catch their creatures if they're potentially still small. Can maybe consider the Molten Rains to attack their mana as one way we can interact. Rabblemaster to try and race, although they have so many lifelink enchantments that that's unlikely. What don't we like? Relic of Progenitus doesn't do a whole lot, so that can go. Probably want the Blood Moons to try and cheat an early Blood Moon into play with Spirit Guide. Eternal Scourge seems okay as just a chump blocker. Hazoret as an indestructible blocker could be okay. Chandra and Koth are questionable. Storm Breath can at least apply a lot of pressure. So yeah, I'm not sure about the Planeswalkers here. Those are potentially cuttable. I think Molten Rain does more for us. And yeah, I'm not sure about Rabblemaster versus Planeswalker. If our plan is to attack their mana, then Goblin Rabblemaster can outrace them, but the problem is our opponent can operate on just 1 or 2 lands. So I don't know how likely that is to work out. Can just hope to land a Blood Moon and that their mana is all non-basic lands, essentially. I guess it makes sense. I'll just shave a Koth and a Chandra and bring in the Rabblmasters. And see if this plan works out. And then we'll leave in the Lightning Bolts and the Skreds just to have more answers to the Core Spirit Dancer. Would like to be on the play. Alright, I mean, it's not a great hand. Triple Blood Moon is not what we want. But we do have a Spirit Guide, so if we happen to draw a land off the top, we can have a turn 2 Blood Moon, which hopefully messes with their mana enough, and a Molten Rain can add to that as well. I think this is one of the few hands that can maybe get there if we draw land. Opponent mulliganing, looking for those hexproof creatures in their opening hand, and we have to pray for a mountain off the top. And turn 1 Razorverge Thicket into Slippery Bogle, and that's not a mountain. So we can Simian Spirit Guide out a Mindstone. I guess it's more or less the same as just doing nothing here. That way if we draw land we can still play a Blood Moon. But yeah, the window might have closed now since they can start enchanting the Slippery Bogle. Turn 2 Temple Garden. Rancor. And another Rancor, so 5 powered Slippery Bogle. Well, They did have all non-basics, so if we did draw a land off the top, then Blood Moon would have been pretty effective. And there's a land, a turn late, sadly. I guess we'll still go for the Blood Moon here. But now we need something like an Anger of the Gods off the top to deal with the Slippery Bogle. Opponent's got a Dried Arbor. Another Mind Stone. So what's our plan here? We can play Mind Stone and sack a Mind Stone to draw a card to try and find that Anger of the Gods. Or we could Molten Rain one of the opponent's lands. I think I like the Mind Stone plan here. So we'll play a Mind Stone and then sacrifice a Mind Stone. And Eternal Scourge, I guess, could block and trade, so if that could work. Opponent can attack us for 6, and then next turn they would trample for 2, plus another 1 damage from the Dried Arbor. So that would be 1 damage short of killing us. Spirit Guide, not too useful, I guess it's just a 2/2 blocker here. We'll just play the Eternal Scourge and pass a turn. And then our opponent's probably gonna stop attacking. And then we have to try and apply pressure with the Stormbreath Dragon. The Bogle's deck doesn't have a ton of basic lands, so hopefully they're unable to cast any more spells for the rest of the game. Our opponent could attack, hoping that they can put us to 1 and next turn Dried Arbor finishes us off. But between the Spirit Guide and the Molten Rain, we've got plenty of answers to Dried Arbor. So that's probably what they're considering. And our opponent decides to send, and then next turn we have to decide how we want to deal with the Dried Arbor. Whether it's by blocking with Spirit Guide or blowing it up with a Molten Rain. Would be nice to keep Molten Rain to maybe destroy basic land if our opponent ever finds one. Spirit Guide could also be useful in helping us ramp out a Stormbreath Dragon. Alright, damage happens. Opponent gets their Rancors back. Opponent's got another Razorverge Thicket, so no basic lands in sight. And we get to untap. Another Eternal Scourge is nice. So going for the Molten Rain on the Dried Arbor is better if our opponents were to have more enchantments and draws a basic to enchant the Dried Arbor, maybe trampling over the Eternal Scourge, although I guess the Rancor itself wouldn't be enough. So I guess I like going for the Eternal Scourge here. And then keep the Molten Rain to maybe kill a basic land at some point, if they do find one, and use the Spirit Guide to ramp out the Stormbreath. If our opponent, let's say, has a Path to Exile in hand and then top decks a Plains, we're in trouble, as opposed to just Molten Raining the Dried Arbor. Dried Arbor stays back. Another Stormbreath off the top, so we can play another Blood Moon, although that doesn't do a whole lot. Don't really want to sack the Mind Stone. Could attack and then Molten Rain. I guess we'll Molten Rain here. And start beating down. And then hopefully find a land off the top so we can play the Stormbreath Dragon and present a 2-turn clock. Opponent does nothing. There's a mountain. There's a Stormbreath. And attack for 7. And that should be game. Alright, sweet, so managed to steal a game with Blood Moon, even though we thought it was too late. Any change to our sideboard plan? Like, you could make a case for maybe Relic Cycling being better than Skred or Lightning Bolt. Still want to have a few answers to Core Spirit Dancer, since that card is very scary. I think I'll stay put, maybe split the difference, like take out 2 Skreds for 2 Relics. Yeah, I can buy that. Alright, what about this hand? No Blood Moon. We do have a Spirit Guide, so if we were to top deck a Blood Moon, we could cast it on turn 2. We've got an Anger of the Gods, so if they don't have any totem armors, or if they don't get their creature above 3 toughness, that's a potential way to clean up the board. Not a great hand, but as far as hands against the Hexproof deck, this has a fighting chance. Opponent kept 7 this time. First land is a Horizon Canopy, so might be a land light hand. Otherwise you would normally play out your other lands first. Turn on Bogle, Eternal Scourge could come in handy. We'll just play a Relic for now. And then hopefully this Anger of the Gods can catch some creatures. It's gonna be a Razorverge Thicket on 2. Ethereal Armor doesn't bode well. It's gonna add a lot of toughness and a Spider Umbra on top, so 4/4 Slippery Bogle. Yeah, that's an issue. Another Spirit Guide, so we don't feel too bad using one this turn. We could try and cheat a Rabble Master in play, we could play Eternal Scourge to chum block with. The Relic of Progenitus plus Eternal Scourge engine can keep chum blocking the Bogle as long as it doesn't gain trample or flying. So I guess that's probably our plan for now. Until we find a better solution. And it's gonna be a Rancor now too, so they get to trample over the Scourge. So yeah, that's probably game now. And another Hyena Umbra on top. Well, that's too bad. They probably kept the one lander and then drew the second land. If they didn't draw the second land, then maybe Anger of the Gods can do some damage, but Ethereal Armor with 2 enchantments is just too much, and then all the totem armors on top is extra protection. So Scourge dies, we can exile it, so we can replay it, but that doesn't really help us too much. Scrying Sheets off the top. Yeah. We will replay the Eternal Scourge. But I'm not sure what gets us out of this. Maybe a Ratchet Bomb off the top can clean up some of those enchantments. The Totem Armor would still save the Slippery Bogle. And now a Spirit Mantle as well. Yeah, that's just a final nail in the coffin, as we can't even chum block the Slippery Bogle anymore. So 11 damage comes across. Well, the Hexproof matchup is pretty terrible for our deck, so I was surprised we managed to steal game 2 there, but Blood Moon can definitely help. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We've got a turn 3 Blood Moon here. Yeah, I think we can keep this. We've got a Skred's early interaction as well. Mindstone can help us ramp into Koth and Stormbreath. Facing a turn 1 Shambling Vent, so maybe some sort of Abzan or black-white token life gain deck. Play a Mountain, say go. So Blood Moon might be effective in this matchup. After seeing Snow-Covered Mountain, our opponent's gonna maybe fetch for a basic land. Instead it's say Flagstones and a Tidehollow Scholar. Alright. If they take Blood Moon, we can just kill it with Skred next turn. So they might just take the Skred. But if they force us to cast a Skred, then we're unable to play Mindstone, so we might not be able to play Blood Moon on 3. But they do just indeed take the Skred. Lightning Bolt is not bad, but I'm still gonna play the Mindstone since we want to be able to play Blood Moon next turn. Opponent knows about it now, so if they have any fetch lands, they'll definitely be fetching for basic lands. If they don't have any, then we might shut them out of the game. It's gonna be another Scholar, this time probably taking the Blood Moon, but as it turns out we drew a Lightning Bolt, so land of the top lets us play both. They might also just go after the Lightning Bolt and try and kill us with some 2/2 creatures here, which may or may not work. And yeah, that's what they are going for. Anger of the Gods, great draw here. Blood Moon fixes our mana, so we can cast the Anger of the Gods next turn. And we'll clean up all these Scholars. So this game's looking good. Take 4 down to 14. And another Blood Moon, we'll just cast Anger here. And get our cards back. And our opponent scoops them up. Alright, so we're up against a black-white kind of hand disruption-y deck. Could be Eldrazi and Taxes. So creature removal seems decent. Anger of the Gods probably coming in. What else can we expect from our opponents? Shattering Spree can kill Tidehollow Scholar, can maybe destroy an Aether Vial as well that they use to cheat in cards, and if our plan is to shut down their mana with Blood Moon, shutting down Aether Vial is somewhat appealing. But overall, Shattering Spree is pretty narrow, so I'm not sure if we want to bring that in. Rabble Master seems kind of medium, since they have a lot of creatures to block with. Molten Rain could be okay, so mainly the Anger of the Gods coming in. I guess Ratchet Bomb could be decent, can blow up both Aether Vial and creatures, so it's pretty versatile. And anything coming out that we don't like, Relic doesn't seem all that necessary, so I could see shaving that. Go down to 2 copies. Keep in all the Blood Moons, all the 4-drops. Stormbreath is pretty good against the Path to Exile deck. Could consider the Molten Rain to complement the Blood Moons, but on the draw, Molten Rain can be a little bit slow at times. Alright, what about this hand? It's not amazing, but we do get to play a Skred on 2, into Scourge, into Pia and Kiran. And if our opponent tries to play around Blood Moon too hard, we don't have one anyway. Yeah, I guess I'll try it. Opponent does have the basic Swamp into Inquisition, which can take Skred or Scourge. We did take out 2 relics, so we have fewer synergies with the Eternal Scourge. Probably gonna see the Skred being taken anyway. Nope, they go for the Scourge. Alright, Storm Breath off the top. Could be decent if their removal is Path to Exile and they have a slower start. We've got an answer to a turn 2 Dark Confidant. It's gonna be another Inquisition instead. Taking the Skred. Alright, so they clear their early plays, Marsh Flats, so they can fetch another basic. So yeah, Blood Moon's not gonna be too effective this game. There's always the argument of like taking out Blood Moons after game 1 since the opponent knows about it, but we didn't know for sure how many fetch lands and basics their opponent runs, so Blood Moon could still be effective regardless. Opponent fetches, I imagine we'll see, oh, a basic Swamp, alright. So maybe they need double black for something, or they already have a Plains in hand. Well, Lightning Bolt can answer most creatures they play here, and then we can start curving into our curve toppers here. And it's gonna be a Smallpox, wow, alright. That's unexpected. So we have to discard a card. I'm guessing we discard the Storm Breath, since if we have to sack a land here, we're gonna be unable to cast the Storm Breath anytime soon. And then keep the Lightning Bolt to answer any creature that they might play. There's a basic Plains. Spirit Guide can help us play Pia and Kirin next turn. We'll see what happens. If they have a Scholar, it's a little awkward, since if we bolted in response, they still get to exile one card for free out of our hand. So it's kind of like the way Oblivion Ring type cards used to work. It's not updated Oracle text like we see nowadays, where if we would kill the Scholar, we would get to keep all the cards. So I think we let this Scholar resolve, and then they're probably gonna take the Lightning Bolt. But then we get to play a Pia and Kirin next turn, which can also shoot down the Scholar if we wanted to. Mind Stone's more fodder for the Pia and Kirin. But I think we want to get this in play before they Smallpox us again, or maybe play another Scholar. We're on the board finally. Scholar attacks. I think we just take it. Next turn we can attack with the Thopters and then maybe take out Scholar. It's going to be a Gravecrawler. Alright, so Anger of the Gods is definitely good in this matchup. Blood Moon now. Not too effective, like we could still play it if we wanted to, and it could have an impact on the game. Or we could use Pia and Kirin, although how much do we care about killing the Scholar? It is a zombie for the Gravecrawler, so if we kill the Scholar they can't get back Gravecrawler, which is relevant. I guess I kind of like playing the Blood Moon, so we'll attack first, and then play it. And then next turn we can start killing their creatures. So we'll take 4, down to 13. The problem here is if they kill Pia and Kirin, then we might end up losing the race. Another Mind Stone off the top, so we're unable to play Mind Stone and activate Pia and Kirin. Would be nice to sack the Mind Stone to Pia and Kirin and keep the Thopters, but I think we just want to kill the Scholar here while we've got a chance. So we'll hit for 4, and then I guess we can wait until the opponent's turn. Doesn't make a huge difference to kill the Scholar. Opponent attacks. And we'll take out the 2/2. Get our Lightning Bolt back. I guess I could have a Fatal Push. Alright, so we did get punished for waiting, I guess. I didn't really expect my opponent to still have a Fatal Push in their deck, since it's pretty bad against us. Since now they got to enable Revolt, and they get to kill our 4 converted mana cost creature. But the reason not to activate it right away is that let's say our opponent plays another Scholar pre-combat, then they don't get to take the Lightning Bolt we would get back from the first Scholar dying. So there's probably more reasons to wait there than to do it right away. So we could play both Mind Stones here, and then use the Thopter to block the Gravecrawler, or we can try and race, since we do have the Lightning Bolt. I think I just like playing defense here. Just play 2 Mind Stones, and then trust that our late game is going to be better than the opponent's, and hope they don't have another zombie to get back the Gravecrawler. And now we will gladly top deck Stormbreath Dragons and Planeswalkers. It's going to be Thoughtseize, taking the Lightning Bolt. And we'll take the trade. Alright, Koth of the Hammer is a good top deck. And didn't play any mountains this turn. Always got to make sure when targeting a mountain with Koth that it's not the mountain that you just played for the turn, since it will still have Summoning Sickness, and that can be pretty awkward. So let's play Koth here. Untap a mountain and attack for 4. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome, so managed to beat Black-White Smallpox. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a pretty slow hand that does get sped up by Simian Spirit Guide a little bit, but we still have 3 4-drops and a 5-drop. Don't think we can keep that. This hand's also not great, all mana, but I'm tempted to keep this. We get to play a Mind Stone, we get a Scry to look for action, and now we can keep any 4 and 5 drops on top of our deck. Definitely bottoming a Mountain. And it's going to be a Street Wraith cycled, so it could be some sort of Living End deck or Death Shadow. Bloodstained Mire, and a Watery Grave, so looks like Death Shadow. Well, if they have got Hand Disruption, they get to take our Mind Stone, and then they get to marvel at our basic snow-covered mountains. Bobble. Alright, so Death Shadow doing Death Shadow things. I might see a turn 2 Death Shadow or Gurmag Angler, which is going to be hard to beat. Mountain of the Top's not what we wanted. If we can land an early Blood Moon in this matchup, it can be pretty backbreaking. But trying to play it through Stubborn Denials and Thoughtseizes is not the easiest. And more Street Wraiths. Opponent desperately digging, lowering their life total to grow the Death Shadows. And a Verdant, so maybe they're on a slightly different build of Death Shadow. Maybe it's the Tarmogoyf version instead of the Grixis one. Alright, turn 2 Overgrown Tomb, so Tarmogoyf might be happening here. Nope, it's just a Death Shadow. 7/7, that's pretty big. They are down to 6, they have blue up, so they could have a Stubborn Denial in hand. Another Mountain of the Top, alright. Well, I guess we're hoping for double Lightning Bolts, but that's going to be difficult if our opponent has a Stubborn Denial. Alright, it's going to be Thought Scour, not a card you see very often. Does enable cards like Traverse the Ulvenwald, which relies on Delirium, and maybe fuels Tarmogoyf and Snapcaster Mage. So Death Shadow gets in for 7. Well, we haven't cast a spell yet this game. Chandra might be the first one, although that's likely to get Stubborn Denialed. Another Thought Scour, milling over Death Shadows and Fatal Pushes. So Relic of Progenitus looks pretty decent in this matchup if they have Tarmogoyfs and cards like Traverse the Ulvenwald. Ratchet Bombs coming in since it can deal with Death Shadow on the cheap. Opponent might have been sandbagging this Thoughtseize, decides to fire it off just to find our Chandra and a bunch of mountains. Death Shadow now a 9/9, opponent down to 4. So if we top deck a Koth off the top and they somehow don't have an answer, we can animate a mountain and smack them for 4. But they probably have a Stubborn Denial up here, is my guess. Hazoret would have been good if our hand wasn't filled with mountains. So, do we even show it? I guess we probably shouldn't. So we'll pass a turn here, see if we can get some more info. We see opponent with the red mana, so maybe Kolaghan's Command present in their deck as well as maybe Temur Battle Rage. Alright, so Death Shadow will get across the finish line here. Well, we didn't cast a single spell this game, so hopefully we can improve in sideboarded games here. So, a Ratchet Bomb coming in. I don't think we want Lava Coil. Molten Rain seems okay. And do we want Rabble Masters? Like, it can be okay, but it's also awkward against Death Shadow. So I think we'll keep that in the sideboard for now. So these are potential considerations. What don't we like? Lightning Bolt's actually not great against Death Shadow, since Death Shadow is often bigger. And it's unlikely that we can burn them out with Lightning Bolt. It doesn't kill Tarmogoyf usually. So I don't actually like Lightning Bolt too much. Blood Moon's okay, especially on the play. Anger of the Gods is pretty weak, so that can come out for sure. And I think we keep in all the heavy hitters and then just hope to draw them when we need them. And then we can add 2 more cards. I guess Lava Coil's an improvement over Lightning Bolt. And yeah, I guess we'll keep in 1 bolt to keep them honest. Would like to be on the play. And this hand's reasonable. Turn 1 Relic can do some damage, and then turn 3 Blood Moon that they'll have to deal with. So we want to make sure to keep using the Relic to keep their graveyard small. We haven't seen any Delve creatures, but they might be in there, as well as Tarmogoyf. Turn 1 Polluted Delta. Finds a Watery Grave. And we might see a Thoughtseize or an Inquisition here. It's going to be Thoughtseize. And we'll see whether or not they take the Blood Moon. My guess is they do. Blood Moon also an enchantment in the graveyard for Tarmogoyf purposes, but with a Relic in play that shouldn't matter too much. Alright, let's activate Relic. I think we will try and keep Relic in play for as long as possible. but if we're desperate for a certain top deck, then we can always decide to sacrifice it. Opponent's gonna Noxious Revival back their Thoughtseize. I guess now we sack the Relic, so they don't get their Thoughtseize back, since otherwise they get to Thoughtseize Koth, which is kind of our only action spell at the moment. Could of course just let it happen. Could be bait since they want access to their graveyard, and they want us to sacrifice a Relic here. But this seems like a decent use of our Relic. So Noxious Revival will still end up in the graveyard, but Thoughtseize and Blood Moon are gone. And then the Noxious Revival actually ended up getting exiled to the original Relic activation, which was still on the stack. Opponent cycles a Street Wraith end of turn. Alright, let's hope that these Koths can carry us to victory here. If our opponent has a Death Shadow, we could be in trouble. Polluted Delta. So we did slow down any potential Delve creatures or big Tarmogoyfs, but opponent does get to rebuild their graveyard here, and Death Shadow is not what we wanted to see. Just a 2-2, but of course, if we had a Bolt, they could just respond by sacking the Fetch Land and grow the Death Shadow. Pia and Kieran, alright. Well, we've got a lot of good 4-drops coming up. Hopefully one of them gets to stick. Racing Death Shadows can also get pretty complicated. Pia and Kieran providing a bunch of chump blockers is definitely useful. And we see our opponent fetching red mana, could be an indication that they have a Temur Battle Rage in hand. Cycles Street Wraith, opponent down to 6. So 7/7 Death Shadow. If they can deal themselves 3 more damage and cast Temur Battle Rage, then we would be dead. Opponent's got a basic Forest, gets in for 7. Down to 13 we go. And against any potential stubborn denials, we probably want to lead with Pia and Kieran, especially after drawing a second one. So we'll get that out there. And then we'll have to think carefully about the implications of Temur Battle Rage giving double strike and trample. Opponent could also have a Kolaghan's Command here that they're going to fire off, killing Pia and maybe a Thopter. Nope, it's going to be Assassin's Trophy instead. Fair enough. I'll happily get a Mountain. Alright, Death Shadow getting in the red zone. So if they did have Temur Battle Rage, this would be a 14/14 trampling Death Shadow, so the only way we survive is if we block with both Thopter tokens. Is that a winning strategy, is what we have to ask ourselves. If we chump block with both, of course our opponent's not forced to pull the trigger on Temur Battle Rage. Next turn we get to play another Pia and Kieran, and we're faced with the same decision. Again, we would have to chump block with at least 2 toughness worth of creatures, and our board keeps getting demolished. So I don't think that's a winning strategy here, even though, of course, we would die on the spot to the Temur Battle Rage, which feels bad. So then the question is, do we single block, or do we just take 7? The 2 Thopters plus Koth could potentially be lethal, but it's unlikely to work with their opponent still having 4 cards in hand. I'm tempted to just take it, and then we can maybe do the thing where we chump block with the Thopter token and then sacrifice it to Pia and Kieran to deal 2 damage to something and kind of extract more value out of them. Simian Spirit Guide to draw. So we're almost able to do 2 things in the same turn. We could play Pia and then still have 3 mana to use the ability, which is pretty nifty. So that could definitely come in handy. So I guess we'll start by casting Pia and Kieran, see if it resolves. You never know. Opponent could have like a Disdainful Stroke out of the sideboard. Pia and Kieran resolves, and now I think I'm comfortable attacking with the Thopter tokens. Since if they had Temur Battle Rage, we would have been dead. So don't have to play around that anymore. And then we can do the thing where we chump block with the Thopter and then can use the Spirit Guide to add 1 mana, so we can use Pia and Kieran's ability to shoot 2 damage to their face and try and kill them next turn. Opponent could have Stubborn Denials in hand that they're unable to use, but that's why we played Pia and Kieran instead of Koth. Opponent cycles Street Wraith, maybe looking for that Temur Battle Rage, but now they're actually dead to Pia and Kieran's ability, so can wait for them to tap out if we want to. And yeah, they end up milling the Temur Battle Rage, so we're just kind of getting some free information here. So might as well wait. But yeah, they're dead to the Spirit Guide. Death Shadow attacks. We'll block. And then we'll use the Spirit Guide. And that does it. Sweet. Alright, so managed to steal that game. Do we make any changes for game 3? I think we stay put. Alright, what about this one? Yeah, it has potential. Like if they take away the Mind Stone, our hand's kinda slow. But we're on the draw, so we're likely to draw some lands, and then we've got a Blood Moon that they have to deal with. Lava Coil as interaction if they try and play an early Death Shadow. and then some heavy hitters. So I don't mind keeping this hand. It's got a lot of action, so it's pretty resilient against Thoughtseize. Turn 1 Traverse, looking for land, getting basic Swamp, so they have a bit of insurance against Blood Moon. Well, we've got a lot of Blood Moons incoming, so on the draw I could see the argument for maybe shaving some Blood Moons, but it's not like we have a ton of impactful cards in the sideboard that we would want instead. Like this Blood Moon could be a Goblin Rabblemaster or a Lightning Bolt. Unclear whether or not that's great. Well, drawing 2 Blood Moons in a row is definitely not where we want to be. We can hope that one of them gets Stubborn Denialed, so we kind of get a bit of value out of it. The Mind Stone did resolve, and it's going to be a Thought Scour end of turn here, revealing Denial and Polluted Delta. So their graveyard is containing 4 card types, so a future Traverse can find a Death Shadow, for example. Opponent does nothing. Alright, Mountain of the Top, so we could just play Hazoret, which plays around Stubborn Denial, but given that our hand is all these Blood Moons, I kind of want to run into a Stubborn Denial to an extent, although I guess we can just play the land and then Blood Moon plays around Stubborn Denial since they don't have a creature in play. So I guess I'll still go for the Blood Moon here after playing the land, even though we could get fancy and not play the land and get the Blood Moon Stubborn Denialed, but I think it's actively good if we resolve this, so might as well. Opponent's gonna flow 2 mana, maybe this is an Assassin's Trophy on the Blood Moon, which we don't mind at all. So opponent kept up their mana so they could make this play of floating the mana and then casting Trophy, but as it turns out we're pretty happy with that exchange. So next turn we can Blood Moon again, still have a Lava Coil to maybe get rid of a small Death Shadow. Tarmogoyf here could be pretty big with the enchantment in the graveyard as well, so that's a card we don't want to see. And there it is, 5/6 Tarmogoyf. Alright, better find a Relic of Progenitus soon. Spirit Guide. We could Chandra and Lava Coil to get rid of the Tarmogoyf, although that's a pretty all-in play, and if our opponent has Stubborn Denial as one of the 5 cards in hand, that's not gonna work. So I think I would rather play the Blood Moon first and then next turn go for that play, and hope they don't have a Thoughtseize or Inquisition to break that up. Otherwise we can try and play a Hazoret at some point to just block the Tarmogoyf as another answer. So let's go for Blood Moon. And they might Stubborn Denial this if they have one. And then we could Spirit Guide out another Blood Moon if we wanted to. Opponent gets a Watery Grave, and there's a Denial. Alright, so if we go for the Spirit Guide Blood Moon play, we shut off most of their mana, they're left with single Swamp, which still lets them cast Death Shadow and hand disruption spells. But I think that's okay, since our hand is slowly getting emptied, and we're close to having a Hazoret that can block. Worst case scenario is a Thoughtseize taking Hazoret. But then if we draw land, we can still make the Chandra plus Lava Coil play to answer Tarmogoyf. So this seems fine. 5/6 Tarmogoyf, 4 turn clock, so we do have a little bit of time. So we managed to extract quite a bit of value out of all these Blood Moons. One got trophied, one got Stubborn Denialed, and the third one resolved. And yeah, land of the top, so we get to make the Chandra plus Lava Coil play, and our opponent can't really interact with it. So let's play Chandra. And I guess we'll Lava Coil first. Minus our last card is Hazoret, which is going to be great at finishing off our opponent here. Do have to be careful of Death Shadows. Our opponent could have Death Shadows stuck in hand, unable to cast them at 13 life. So if we start attacking them with Hazorets, then that is suddenly unlocked. But we might still be able to outrace Death Shadow. I think we just plus Chandra, see what we get. Alright, just 2 damage, revealing Skred. So we'll run out Hazorets and attack for 5. And then the question is, do we sack the Mind Stone or keep Mountain in hand to discard to Hazoret? Opponent's down to 6. I think we just say go here. Keep Mountain in hand as fuel for Hazoret. Opponent could of course have Dismember to answer Hazoret, but that's not a card we necessarily expect to see against our deck. There's a 7/7 Death Shadow, so now Hazoret can kind of just play defense for a while. I guess we'll sack the Mind Stone. Cost the draw. Play the Mountain. I guess we can just kill our opponent here, can't we? Just plus Chandra, deal 2 damage, and then Hazoret activates twice. And that's game. Alright, sweet. Well, did not expect to win the match against Death Shadow, but here we are. Sweet, wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. I also wanna thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.